brought to you by PrayLatin.com, makers of prayer cards featuring complete English phonetic renderings of Latin pronunciations.
The push to ordain women in the Catholic Church seems to have gone on hold, at least for the time being, with the arrival of Pope Leo XIV as the recognized universal pastor and Holy Father of the Catholic Church. But that doesn't mean it's going to stop anytime soon. There are dioceses that are moving forward through incrementally allowing this to happen. Many of the modernist bishops believe this to be an inevitability. It used to be that you could not enter seminary, generally like an actual seminary, where you would be attending studies with seminarians on their way to the priesthood, unless you were yourself likely to be on the way to the priesthood. You could, of course, discern out or be told by the seminary director that you weren't really called to the priesthood or whatever, other things. But in general, it was only for studies for people who were going to be going to seminary to become permanent deacons or priests. And then that began to change. We saw more and more lay theologians, and to a degree that's fine, but there is a fine line. There is a dividing line between them, and it was always understood that way. There have always been lay theologians, but we've seen a differing take on things recently, and that is women entering seminary with the expressed intent purpose of being trained in every way possible except until they get to that stage where they would be entering the permanent diaconate. And then they are holding there with the belief, fostered by their bishops, that the church will one day change the teaching, update it to fit the modern world, and allow women to enter the actual ordained diaconate. And when that happens, they will have a whole crop of women ready to go. And when they're ready to go, you'll see a whole flood of these deaconettes, deaconesses, as they'll call them, erroneously citing Scripture and the first century of the church to claim that there were deaconesses who were ordained, when there is literally no historic evidence that they were ordained. That the closest analogy we have to the role of the deaconesses you see referenced in Scripture are what we would call nuns today. That was the closest analog we have. The church phased out the deaconess role, which was never ordained to begin with, because we had nuns to handle those things. And because the way certain things were done changed over time so that their role wasn't needed to avoid scandal. But that hasn't stopped anybody from trying to reimpose this error, because it would be an error now to bring it back, on the church today, with the full-throated support of bishops. We go to the Catholic Conclave blog with this headline: 9 women submit applications for seminary training in Germany. Freiburg, young female theologians demand admission to the seminary. The church only ordains men. Why women still applied to Baden? And of course, ladies and gentlemen, it's Germany. Because it seems that Germany is the gift that keeps on giving in terms of heresy and schismatic attitudes in the church. It was Germany, of course, that the so-called Reformation launched from. It was Germany that at Vatican II, a lot of the experts, the lay experts and seminarians who were experts who would go on to become priests, who were modernists, came and helped twist the direction of Vatican II to be what it ended up being. They all came out of Germany. A lot of the worst ideas in the church today came from Germany, most recently with, of course, the synodal path, the German synodal path, which make the synod on synodality look conservative by comparison, to the point where Rome, under Pope Francis, told the Germans to stop, not because what they were doing was bad, but because, in the words of the official decrees they received, you need to do this in communion with the rest of the church. Not that or looking at the ordination of women was bad, but they needed to go with the rest of the universal church. Very big distinction there. They said these things. And the German bishops were, of course, happy to go along with things. Once some private meetings happened and they realized it looked like Rome was on their side. Now, we don't know how this will play out under Pope Leo XIV. The signs aren't exactly positive there either. From the article, quote, 9 female theology students have submitted their applications to the Freiburg Seminary. They feel called to become priests and want to support people as pastors in both happy and difficult times. As one of the women told the Badische Zeitung, their applications to become priests are a call for an open church. According to canon law, and with reference to the following of Jesus' male disciples, only men may become priests. The ban on women has been heavily criticized for decades. No change is in sight. In the Protestant, Anglican, and Old Catholic churches, women can become pastors and bishops. The 22 to 30-year-old Freiburg theologians belong to the initiative, My God Does Not Discriminate, My Church Does. They said their application, with 9 individual letters of motivation, was an act of empowerment, an escape from powerlessness. 5 applied anonymously because they feared negative professional consequences. The rector of the seminary, Auxiliary Bishop Christian Wirtz, told the Catholic news agency that the application was a good sign of the commitment and seriousness with which the women engaged with their vocation and their path in the church. He wanted to talk with them, the bishop said. However, he could not offer any hope of admission to the seminary because the church's worldwide rules preclude this for women. In Germany, fewer and fewer men want to become priests. On May 11th, Freiburg Archbishop Stefan Berger ordained 2 new priests for 2025. Note there that the bishop is in support of what they're doing. And through his words, you can tell that he agrees with them, broadly speaking. But I'm going to highlight some language they used here. My God does not discriminate, my church does. The church, I will remind you, is the spotless bride of Christ. To say that the church discriminates in the way that they're using the word, we all discriminate. We all make choices. We make a choice hierarchically on a good or utilitarian basis every single day. That's a form of discriminating. But here, when they use the word discriminate, they use it in a negative sense. To say that the spotless bride of Christ discriminates is to say the church is not the spotless bride of Christ. It is to deny that the church cannot make errors. But notice what their motivation was. It clearly said that it was an act of empowerment, an escape from powerlessness. This is a Marxist framing of the entire issue. Be obsessed with power in an institutional sense is not the stuff of the Catholic faith. It is not. It is the stuff of Karl Marx. And it is the stuff of selfishness, self-centeredness, materialism, and secularism. This is secular thinking. You do not have a right to holy orders. No one does. It is something the church confers on somebody whom they believe to be fit for the office. The church has never said that you or I or anyone else has a right to any sacrament other than baptism and the Eucharist and confession, and even then, under certain circumstances. But you don't have an act or a claim to any right to holy orders. No one does. And that kind of thinking is the crux of the problem today in the church. We have a self-centered belief today that predominates everything, that we have rights to claim for ourselves, for our personal empowerment, our personal aggrandizement, that we as individuals have a right, and the church is violating those rights. And the sad truth of the matter is this: many will agree with them. When you look at the data in the West, conducted by Pew Research and other organizations about what Catholics believe in the pews, regular mass-going Catholics, a plurality tend to believe that ordination should be opened up in the way that they're asking for, and along with a whole host of other issues. This is a core question of orthodoxy, and the resistance to these errors is going to be something that will be a hallmark of this new papacy, whether he chooses to resist them or embrace them or somehow try to meet them halfway. So pray for the Holy Father. Even if you don't like the things that he's doing, you still need to pray for him to resist these grotesque errors. But I'm curious what you have to say about this. Are you surprised at all that despite there being a new pope, that with the support of their bishop at the seminary, these people are applying for seminary even though they know they can't get in? The bishop says he supports what they're doing even though he can't admit them, implying that the church is unjust in this, which is what those 9 applicants are saying. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps a lot too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.